Alright guys, so in the previous video we left a fully functioning notify event starting alarm, and that basically creates a channel that emits an event every time it's about to start. Now we're going to improve on that. So if you haven't seen the previous episode, I'll leave a link up there and you can go check it out and then come back to this one. We had this event starting alarm. It'll emit an event 30 seconds before it starts, and then we execute this, right? We make a phone call, we pulse a light. This is not very versatile because if I want to disable an alarm or something, I have to change this and come and recompile, and it's just very coupled. My alarms are not decoupled from this. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna edit this so that every time an event's about to start, it'll be printed into standard out as a JSON. And then I'll have another process reading from standard in, and it'll say, hey, if an event came in from via standard in, pulse a light or make a phone call or whatever. And then I'm gonna pipe the processes together. So this is not a video about Linux, so I'm not gonna teach you what pipes are and standard out and standard in. Basically, it'll look like this. Notify event starting or something like that. And this is gonna print to standard out every time an event's about to start. And then with a pipe, I connect the standard out of this process to the standard in of the next process. So it's gonna be something like this, right? And we can pulse lights. And we can do whatever we want. Even we can pass it to a node app. And so all these processes are going to be reading from standard in, and whenever they see something come in via standard in, they're going to do their thing. This is going to make a phone call, this is going to pulse a light. So this way we are very detached, and if I want to remove an alarm, I just remove this from here, and then we can run it again, and that's it. So I'm not gonna do all the changes live because I don't want this video to get too long, but let me show you what that looks like. Basically, it's like this. So you need two things to create a calendar service that you can access your Google Calendar. You need credentials, which I'm reading from a file, and you need a token, which I'm reading from standard in. Why I'm doing it this way will become apparent by the end of the video. So once I have credentials and I have a token, I can create a calendar service with those two things. Okay, so we used to do this in the first line, and I never covered this because this is very easy to do and any tutorial out there will do it, but I'm gonna leave it on my GitHub repository when I publish everything. So then the next thing that I do is I create an encoder, a JSON encoder on standard out. What does this mean? The JSON encoder will wrap standard out, and this is a standard out now, right? But it could be anything. It doesn't have to just be standard out. This could be a file, it could be a socket. You get an encoder there. And then when you use this encoder and you call the encode method, it's gonna take this event or whatever object you pass in, it's gonna turn it into JSON, and then it's gonna write it to whatever it's wrapping. In this case, it's gonna write it to standard out. So this is what you end up with. Every time an event is about to start, encode that event into standard out. The important thing is now when we compile this, we're gonna end up with an executable that is just gonna be polling my calendar, and in my real implementation that I have here at home, I'm using the push notification API. That'll be another video later. For now, we're just polling, and every time an event is about to start, it's gonna be encoded as JSON into standard out. What we need next is a function like this. It receives a reader, so standard in implements the reader interface, so you can read from it, and it creates an events channel, and it creates a decoder. So before we were using the encoder to encode things into standard out. Now we're using decoder to decode things out of a standard in. We call decode and we block on standard in. Whenever we try to read from standard in, we block until something comes. And that something is going to be a JSON of an event. And so we're going to decode it into this object here. And then we're going to push it into this events channel that we're returning. Right? So all this method does really is it turns standard in into an events channel. So in the previous executable, turn an events channel into things you put in standard out. This is doing the reverse. It's reading from standard in and pumping events into a channel that we return. So then if you wanted to create a phone call alarm, I have a very silly example here. It's not implemented yet. But we call this function that we just saw, we pass it a standard in, and this will return a channel of events. And then we iterate over this channel of events, and here we can, instead of doing this, we could say making phone call. Of course that in the future video, we're actually gonna call the Twilio API and we're actually gonna make a phone call. We're gonna compile this too, and I'm gonna show you what happens. To compile something, we do go build. This will, for now, this will generate a file called meetings YouTube, right? But we can give it a different name. For now, let's call it that. And now we have to compile the make phone call app. Hey guys, sorry about that. I had to take a quick pause. All right, so let's try this out. The first thing we have to do is we have to pass in a token via standard input, right? So we're gonna take cat, which will read a file and print it on standard out, token.json, and we're gonna pipe that into our executable, and then this process is gonna read from standard in, and whenever an event comes in, it's gonna make a phone call. Right now, it's just gonna print, but it will eventually make a phone call. So let's create an event. It's now 6:16. Let's make this at 6:19. We're gonna save that. Let's run this. So in a minute and 30 seconds. All right, it printed out the name of the event, which is called It Works, and starting instead of making phone call because I did not recompile this. I changed it, but I didn't recompile. So you see that it works now, and what I could do now is I could attach something else, you know, pull slides or whatever. Alright guys, so that's all I have for you today. Hopefully the idea from the Unix way of mind that you have a small application that does one thing very well and then you connect them, right? So that's what we've done. And in the next video, I have something very exciting, a command line utility that I think is going to help you a lot in your future projects, and it's helping me a lot in this one. And we're gonna use that, and we're gonna wrap up this part, and then we're gonna move on to Twilio and pulsing the lights and everything, actually implementing the alarms. So I'll see you guys in the next one.